Everyone likes you. So why does seeing them absolutely wipe you out? You leave a dinner where genuinely nothing went wrong. Nobody was difficult. The food was good, the conversation was good, and somebody said they were really glad you came and actually meant it. Then you get in the car and feel that very specific flatness, like a phone sat at 4%. And you just sit there going, I don't get it. I like these people. So you go home, and you don't open the group chat until the morning. Right, here's the reframe. And no, it is not the introvert thing about needing to recharge, which is true for plenty of people and has been stretched to explain an awful lot of things it does not explain. Being liked isn't what's draining you. Manufacturing being liked is. There's a massive difference between those two, and your body already knows it even if you don't. One is something that simply happens to you. The other one is a shift. You clock in for it. Back in 1995, Baumeister and Mark Leary published a paper, arguing that the need to belong isn't a nice to have. It's a fundamental human drive. We are wired to go looking for, and hang on to, a minimum number of stable, caring relationships. And going without does real, measurable damage. That part isn't controversial, and honestly, it isn't the interesting bit either. The interesting bit is what happens when belonging stops being a given and turns into a performance you have to keep passing. Because for some people, at some point, that is exactly what happened. If affection in your early years turned up conditionally, loads of it when you were easy, and quietly switched off the moment you weren't, then you never learned that you belong. You learned the terms and conditions. And terms have to be met, continuously, or they lapse. Pete Walker, a therapist who writes about complex trauma, describes 4 survival responses instead of the usual 3: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. And fawning is exactly what it sounds like. Handling danger by becoming useful, agreeable, pleasant, indispensable. Turning yourself into something nobody would ever want to hurt. Now, Walker's framing isn't a laboratory finding, and I'm not going to dress it up as one, but it named something a huge number of people recognized instantly. And the reason it landed so hard is that it describes a survival strategy that doesn't look like one. Freezing looks like a reaction. Running looks like a reaction. Being lovely at a dinner party? That just looks like a personality. Right, let me put you somewhere specific. Saturday night, 6 people round a table. You're the one who clocked that the person on your left hadn't said anything for a while, and asked them a question you knew they'd enjoy answering. You're the one who caught the joke that landed badly and smoothed it over with a follow-up. You topped up 2 glasses. You steered the conversation off a topic you could tell somebody didn't want to be on. And you did it so smoothly that not one person at that table noticed there had been a swerve. At no point did you decide to do any of that. And at no point did anybody ask you to. Then somebody says, near the end of the night, you're so easy to be around. Which is completely true. True in exactly the way a swan is serene. A sociologist called Arlie Hochschild studied flight attendants and gave us the phrase emotional labor. The work of managing your own feelings and everybody else's as part of the job. And the very specific kind of exhaustion that comes with doing it. Her subjects were getting paid for it. That was her entire point. She was describing a job requirement that never appeared anywhere in the job description. You are doing that same work, except nobody is paying you, there's no end of shift, and you're doing it at your own birthday party. Now here's the counterintuitive bit, and it's the reason understanding all this doesn't fix it. You'd assume the answer is to simply do less. Say no more often. Stop managing the room. Let the awkward silence sit there and see whether the world actually ends. But most people who try that run straight into something quite uncomfortable. The exhaustion doesn't drop anywhere near as much as it should. Sometimes it gets worse. Because now you're doing the exact same scanning, the same noticing, the same instant calculation of what would smooth this, and then overriding it. Which is 2 jobs instead of 1. The tiredness was never really in the doing. It's in the monitoring. You are running a constant background process asking, every single moment, am I currently acceptable? The smoothing is just the output. And suppressing the output does not stop the process. In exactly the same way that not scratching does absolutely nothing about the itch. So the real question isn't, how do I stop being so accommodating? It's, what would have to be true for you to stop checking? And the honest answer is evidence. Evidence that you can be less than delightful in front of somebody and still be there afterwards. Not a belief about it, actual evidence, which you can only get one way. And it is the exact way you have been carefully avoiding for years. There's one moment that exposes the whole structure, and almost everybody who lives like this has had it. Somebody who genuinely cares about you asks what you want. Not what you'd be fine with, what you actually want. Where you'd like to eat, what you'd like to do on your own birthday, whether you'd rather just stay in, and you go blank. Not shy, blank. There's a real reaching for something that should be sat right there. And instead, you find an empty space where the answer is supposed to be kept. So you buy yourself time. You say you don't mind, you're easy, whatever they fancy. And you mean it, which is the strangest part of the lot because you are not being polite. The preference genuinely isn't loading. And that blankness is the clearest evidence going of what this cost you. Preferences aren't something you're born knowing. They get built by being asked over and over for years, and by having your answer taken seriously often enough that forming one feels worth the bother. If your early environment ran on somebody else's mood, then having a preference was not a neutral act. It was a risk. Tiny upside, completely unpredictable downside. So the rational move was to stop generating them altogether. And you did. And the machinery that would produce them has sat unused so long that it has gone stiff. This is also exactly why the standard advice fails. Put yourself first, people say, and you nod along. Then you sit down to actually do it and discover that the very first step, knowing what putting yourself first would even consist of, is just missing. You cannot prioritize a preference you do not have, so the work isn't asserting your needs. It's earlier than that and much more basic. It's noticing, in a completely low-stakes moment with nothing riding on it, that you'd slightly prefer the other chair, and then taking the other chair. Have a look at where this process turns up when you're nowhere near a dinner table. You draft a text, delete a sentence for being too much, and send the shorter one. You say yes to a plan while a distinct part of you is already tallying up what it's going to cost. You got a friend of 8 years who does not know one significant thing about your life. Not because you decided to hide it, but because there was never a single moment where volunteering it wouldn't have made the conversation heavier. You've been handed a compliment and immediately handed one straight back, like a receipt. And you are almost certainly the person everybody rings when something has gone wrong. You've got a reputation for being solid. But nobody rings you when they're fine and just want to hear how you're doing. Which is a distinction you clocked a long time ago and decided not to think about too hard. Kristin Neff, who studies self-compassion, has argued for years that the alternative to beating yourself up is not self-esteem. Because self-esteem is comparative. It requires you to keep winning. Her alternative is treating yourself with the same ordinary decency you'd hand to somebody you like. And the reason I'd point you at that specifically is that it targets the process, not the output. Self-compassion isn't a technique for saying no more often. It's the thing that makes the monitoring unnecessary, because you stop needing an external verdict on whether you are currently acceptable. That's a much slower repair than a boundary script. It's also the only one I've watched actually hold. So start smaller than you want to, not a confrontation, not some dramatic act of honesty. One time, with one safe person, let a moment be slightly less smooth than you could have made it. Leave the silence there. Decline without attaching an excuse. Say the mildly inconvenient thing. And then stay in the room and watch what happens. Almost certainly, nothing will happen. That's your data point, and it takes an unreasonable number of them. One more thing, because there's a fear underneath all of this that hardly anybody says out loud. You suspect that the warmth is the fake part. That if you stopped managing, stopped smoothing, stopped turning up with something to offer, there'd be nothing there. That the pleasant person is a costume over somebody considerably less appealing. And the reason you have never tested it is that you're not sure you'd survive the answer. So let me offer you this. A survival strategy has to be built out of something. You did not invent the ability to read what somebody needs and then meet it. You already had it. And then circumstances taught you to run it constantly on everyone without discrimination. The kindness is real. What isn't real is the compulsion bolted onto it. Which means what's waiting on the other side of this is not a colder person. It's the same person with a working off switch. Everyone likes you, and they like you accurately in the sense that you genuinely are warm and you genuinely are good at this. They just haven't met the version of you that isn't working.